3, 2.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Monday night. Sorry about last night. A lot of hockey going on right now, and just not enough time to get everything done that needs to get done and still be able to get an hour or two of sleep before the next day starts back up again. I'm Jeff Colson. This is Junior Hockey Advisor, and tonight we're going to wrap up the year, kinda. We're going to talk about the year and talk about ways to wrap it up, how to close the season physically, mentally, and get ready for the next year. Most, not everybody, have finished up with their playoffs. Some are still in playoffs. If you're still in there, hang in there, keep going. If not, I'm sure there's been a big breath of fresh air in your family as you wake up on a Saturday or a Sunday and actually can spend some time doing something besides hockey. Well, listen, once again, I'm Jeff Colson, Junior Hockey Advisor. This is 35 years in the making. I use all the things that I've learned as a manager, as a coach, as a father, as a owner of a junior program, as a Division III college coach. I put it all together, and I try to give you an understanding of how we move through the system, how we move from high school to juniors to college, how we move from youth to prep to high school. Whatever avenue you take, we're not an advocate of one avenue over another. All avenues make sense in many, many ways. But what we do is try to make sense for you so you can kind of take some things that kind of get a little bit hectic and try to put some clarity to those areas. I am not an advisor. I do not work as an advisor. I do this. I do online. I do webinars. I do 1-hour consulting calls with people that are looking to get some clarity on what they're doing. That's with or without an advisor. It has nothing to do with their family advisor. And then I work for a North American Hockey League team as their director of player personnel. So I keep myself busy in the hockey world, but really the fun is this. I have more fun having conversations with you, both one-on-one and through the live stream. And I hope you enjoy this too. So if you haven't yet, jump on, say hello, tell us where you're from, tell us a little bit about what we can do for you tonight. We're here to answer questions. You can throw comments up. I tried earlier, and we just did a software download before we started. And okay, so it is working. Hello, welcome, say hi, say hell. We'll take that one off. So I noticed we got a few people on there. We got a decent crowd for a Monday night. I apologize. We're a Sunday night group for the most part, but hey, at least I'm still hanging in there. But it's been a good week. It's been a good week for a lot of things. Tom Brady's coming back. That makes the week good, right? There's still good hockey on TV. You can still watch the USHL. You can still watch the NAL. You can still watch the NHL. You can still watch college hockey. There's still a lot of great hockey. If you're not actively involved in the rank gate, now it's time to sit back on the couch and watch a little bit. Before we get rolling, I did something today. I just kind of stumbled onto something. I was kind of online, and somebody was talking about. It was one of those things about list the most famous person you've ever met, and I just usually blow by those things. And they want you to kind of keep a thread going or pass it on to other friends. I don't really know. I didn't pay attention to that side of it. But what I did was I said, what? Not in the capacity of the business side of hockey, not in the capacity of business side, but as a fan, as just, some guy that's in the rink at different times. Our sport is small. I've had a chance to meet some really, really, really big names. So I thought I'd kind of share with you my top 5 of some of the guys that I've met and some of the stories that kind of go with them. It's kind of fun. First one, this is not in any order because some of these are legendary legends among legends, and some of these are just legends. But I'm going to start off with Alex Del Vecchio. Now, if you don't know who Alex Del Vecchio is, Google, okay? Learn something about hockey here because absolutely amazing hockey player. When I was working down in downtown Detroit, right after the University of Michigan, I had a stint with Ford Motor Company, and I was working in their marketing department. And So I'd skate with a couple buddies of mine were in the Detroit Fire Department, and so they would skate right before the Red Wings practice. They would have ice, so it kind of went like this. It went the fire department, then there was like a half hour, 45-minute block, and a bunch of the Detroit alum used to jump out there, just get out there and kind of shoot pucks around and stuff. And then the Red Wings would come out for their practice. So we were skating in the scrimmage, and always there was a couple of the other old guys that would jump on the ice and jump into the scrimmage with the fire department. And one time he jumped out, and at the time I kept looking at him thinking I knew who he was, but would never think that he would actually jump on and skate with us. So I got a chance to skate with him more than one time, probably 4 or 5 times. He still had his own locker at the old Joe Louis, locker in the locker room at the old Joe Louis. And at the time, he must have, this was in the early 90s. He must have already been in his 70s at that time. But a really nice guy. Got a chance to meet him. So that's number 5 on my list. Get a chance to meet, once again, it's not because of the capacity I'm in now. As a person that's been on the radio interviewing, hockey people, I've got a chance to talk to some really big names from Gretzky on down, and had some really good conversations. But that's kind of the purpose of interviews and being on the job. It's not that average everyday thing that you run across as a hockey player or as a hockey parent. So number 4 on my list is Cujo, Curtis Joseph. My son was playing hockey up in Toronto, and he was little, 9, 10 years old. Spring team, getting ready for the brick tournament, and there was 3 or 4 players on the team that were actually NHL guys. There was a couple guys that were current guys who were playing for Toronto at the time, and Cujo, I think, had just retired that year or the year before. But he was the rock star. It didn't matter what other guys were around. Even when Wendell Clark was around, Curtis Joseph was still the rock star. For whatever reason, he just drew crowds wherever he went. And he would actually come in the locker room, sit over in a corner with his kid, put his hat down, get his kid dressed. Then he would go out on the bench and stand on the bench too. Got to know him a little bit because, back in those days, parents were still around the locker rooms. He must have been 8 years old at the time, maybe 9. But anyway, it was great to meet him. Chris Chelios, number 3 on my list. I met Chris when I was playing out in California. I was on the all-Marine hockey team for the United States Marine Corps. We were done with our season, so we would go over to the rink on Saturday nights where they had a skate and shoot, drop-in hockey. And we would skate there. A few of us would still skate there. We still had our locker room, and we'd go back and get dressed in there. And boom, Saturday we come in there, and he goes, "Hey, I need you guys to help pick who's going to skate tonight. I don't know these guys." So Chris Chelios stood in a dark room right next to where the cashier was, and gave thumbs up or thumbs down to the cashier on what guys he wanted on the ice to skate in the skate and shoot that night. Got a chance to meet him and his family, get to know him and his family, his little brother Stevie, over the years. Didn't stay close, but got a chance to really build a nice relationship. That night, actually, we're on the beach until 3 o'clock in the morning and drinking beers and having pizza with a guy that was playing for the Montreal Canadiens as a first-year player. And I was 21. That was a big 21 years old. That was a big, big deal for me. The next one is I don't know which one to go to because the last 2 guys are pretty amazing. But I'm going to go with I'll go with Wayne Gretzky as my number 2. And I've interviewed him on the radio. This is way, way before I was involved with hockey on the radio and stuff. This was me still working at the Renaissance Center in Detroit. My wife also worked there. That was before she was an attorney, and so we were both working for Ford. She went down and got the car, and I went down from my office to go to the dry cleaner. And I said, pick me up in front of the hotel because it was a complex. If you've ever seen the Detroit skyline, the Renaissance Center is all those cylinders. There's 4 cylinders with one big one in the middle. Well, the one in the middle is a hotel. And so you could actually go down to the mall area of it. I guess you'd call it a mall. It wasn't really much of a mall, but there's a dry cleaner. I picked up my clothes and I cut through the lobby to get out to where my wife was going to pick me up in front of the hotel. So she just went out to the parking lot, picked up the car, and drove around to the hotel to pick me up. As I'm going through the lobby, clothes on my shoulder, I did the old excuse me, kind of help move a guy out of my way because I was trying to get out to the car. and the guy I moved out of the way was Wayne Gretzky. And he smiled and said, "Hey, no problem," and just kind of shuffled over a little bit. And I went, so I didn't really meet him in the like shake hands with him and stuff, but he was chuckling a little bit. Everybody else was chuckling because, he's assuming that most people in the building probably don't know who Wayne Gretzky is, or that he's a player on the team because he's this in the lobby. All the teams used to stay there at that hotel. It was like 2 blocks from the rink at the time, and so it was kind of a chuckle. But that was my experience with him. I guess I'm going to put one more on there. I didn't really have a lot to do. I would put one more besides the one I had left. My daughter had a chance to play for a season in Pittsburgh and played with Steph Lemieux, Mario's daughter. So I got to know the Lemieux. My wife and my daughter got to know them a lot better because when the team toured over in Finland and Russia, they went with them, and so they built a little stronger relationship. But he used to, in Pittsburgh, where Robert Morris plays, I forget the name of the facility. If you can remember the name of the facility, throw it on the notes. It's where Robert Morris played or plays. Who knows where that's at. But he used to come in and stand all the way next to a column on the far end. Well, I always usually do the same thing. I always stand, away from everybody by a column. So, I'm kind of protected from anybody, talking. I just don't like getting in conversations when I'm trying to watch a game. And so this happened 3 or 4 games, the home games, and he'd go stand there, and I'm 20, 30 feet away from him on the next pillar, just kind of lean up against the pillar watching the game. I knew who he was. He had no idea who I was. But I guess over a few games, he started figuring out, who I was cheering for or who I was watching or anyway. So there was a game where my daughter scored a goal. So all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I feel a fist on my shoulder and just a wink and a nod and a thumbs up, and he walks back over to his pillar. So first of all, that was cool as hell. Mario Lemieux coming over and tapping you on the shoulder and giving you a wink and a little thumbs up. I mean, how much more can you get in life if you're a hockey fan? So that happens, and I waited a week or two, and then his daughter scored a goal, and I went over and did the same thing back, and didn't get quite the same reaction at first, and then he realized who it was, and then he laughed and chuckled, and but I didn't try that again. I tried it once, I pulled it off once, and it was worth it. But the standing joke then was it was the owner's corner, because at the time I owned a Tier 3 junior team and used to drive in a used Suburban to the games, and he's flying in his G5 to the games when he's coming back from wherever he's coming back from. So, all in perspective, right? So, last one, and I hope this didn't bore you. I had fun talking about these, but the last one I met was, and I think I probably met the top 3 guys ever, because I met Gordie Howe. I've actually met Gordie Howe several times. Actually, interviewed him numerous times on the radio. Amazing guy, very friendly guy. But I first met him when I was a little kid. I was probably a squirt hockey player, and my family's from St. Clair Shores, Michigan. He had a rink in St. Clair Shores, but I don't think it was at that rink. I think it was at the rink down the street called Civic. Did his hockey camp just because I thought I was going to meet Gordie Howe. And all week long, Monday through Friday, never, no show. And everybody kept hyping it up. And, there were other Red Wings out there, other Red Wings alum, but I mean, come on. I'm a kid in Detroit. I want to see Gordie Howe. I want to meet Gordie Howe. I thought I was going to skate with Gordie Howe. He was the legend. When I was a kid in the 60s, that was there was nothing like that in the Detroit market. So he shows up on the last day, probably 20 minutes of the camp, and as we came off the ice after getting our little pictures taken or getting our little awards or whatever you do in hockey camp at that age, in that era, he stood there and gave us a little attaboy, pat us on the head, pretended to punch us and all that. Maybe was in the rink 10 to 15 minutes, and it severely disappointed me. I met him, but years later, I got a chance to meet him again at an airport. He was with his grandson, and I think we were in Chicago or somewhere, maybe flying back from some type of hockey event and had a layover there. But there was several hockey people, and he was sitting over with his grandson, and I walked over and introduced myself and had a lovely chat with the gentleman, and just the perfect ambassador for the game of hockey, and enjoyed it. So, hey, I'm sure there's been a lot of people out there that have actually met some people out there. I'm sure you've met some great hockey players. Throw them in the notes. Tell us a little bit about who you've met. Tell us a little bit about where it was. Or was there any good story behind it? Any fun story behind it? I'd love to hear some of the other people that have run. Our sport's small, so you get a chance to do this because normally, and what I see a lot nowadays, and it's probably been going on forever, is I see a lot of hockey guys that coach their kids coming up through the ranks too. So, and I run into that a lot in juniors where there's a U16 or a U18 team being coached by, a guy that had 10, 15, 20 years inside the NHL. The list of guys like that are long because there's a lot out there. The reason I brought that up wasn't to, name drop. It's just amazing to me that we're that close to these people, as youth hockey parents, as youth hockey players, and it just was fun. So if you got some great stories, love to hear about them. And let's get on with our chat. Let's talk a little bit about some of the things that the end of the year bring. And, everybody, no matter what league you're at, what age level at, and you hear this all the time, it's cliche, but it's true. Only one team's going to end up a winner, okay? And it's so rare to get that feeling of ending on a winning note that most people aren't used to it, or I should say, don't know how to handle the win at the end of the year as much as they know how to handle the loss at the end of the year. 95, 98% of the teams out there, depending on how big your league is, are going to end with a loss. So, it's going to be disappointing. You got to kind of exhale, got to sleep on it, get a breath, and you got to come back swinging as soon as you possibly can. At the end of the year, there's some things that it doesn't matter if this is youth, 16, 15, 16, 18. It doesn't matter if it's high school. They all have their own nuances, prep, juniors. They all have their own nuances, but there's some common threads there. And the things that there's some practical things, and there's some things that just are strategy things you should think about as the season comes in. I'll start with some practical things. First of all, before it ends, and for some of you, like I said, a lot of people have already ended the year, so this may be a little late. Hopefully not, and hopefully it just happened yesterday or the day before. But as the season ends, having that plan of what you'd like to see next year in place makes things a whole lot easier. It makes it easier if you and your child, or if you're a player watching this, you and your parents have the same strategy and know where you're going with it. Because there are going to be people talking up in the stands. There's going to be a lot of chitter chatter. And the more you have under control as far as where you're going or what you want to do, or at least an idea of what you want to do, makes it a lot easier. Because, you might be chatting up there and you might say, well, look, we're thinking about prep, or we're thinking about high school, or we're thinking about juniors. Well, a lot of times it's nice to hear that other people are thinking the same thing with people you trust in the stands. Now, obviously, there's people that are going to, dream kill no matter what you do. And dream killers come, out of the woods because of talent, because of time, and because of finances. What I mean by that is, the have-nots come in many different categories, and the have-nots are usually the dream killers. And that could be somebody that's have-not. It means a lot of things. A have-not could be somebody that doesn't have the money to let their kids move up to another level, so they're going to try to kill everybody around them. Dream, no, you don't want to do that. We even see that on our chat group, and it frustrates me at times. You have have-nots that don't have the talent to move up to the next level, and let's face it, there is a threshold for everybody, and those parents tend to be a lot of times dream killers too, or they don't have time. The kid's very, very talented in many things and doesn't spend a lot of time with hockey, so there's a dream killer thought process and mentality there. But having your plan in place, being able to discuss it with your family, player, and making sure you know what direction you're going will make things easier as you transition to the next step, even if it is staying. Because once again, if you're in the stands, you say, no, we're happy, we're staying right here. This place is a good choice for us. We like it. You having that plan in place may influence several other people on that team that were sitting on the fence in a good, positive way for you. So there's a good reason to have that plan in place as we go through. So, hey, Chris, thanks for that. The Island Sports Center. I couldn't get that name out of my off my tongue quick enough. to say it back then, but thank you for mentioning it. That's where Lemieux and I had our time together, when we spent lots of time together. Anyway, so another thing is, make sure you end it right with your team logistically. And this makes so much more sense as you go get deeper into the sport. But hey, if you got gear, turn the gear back in. Turn it in. It's a really, really sleazebag move to keep things that you don't own. I don't know why people think that, if a team is set up where you pay a fee, the jerseys are on loan from the league, and to buy a set of jerseys for a team home and away, there's several $1,000s, just in the jerseys. We're not even talking about the socks and the helmets and the gloves. We're just talking about the jerseys. So if you got that stuff, turn it back in. If you really want it, offer to buy the jersey. Offer to buy it. Say, hey, look, I'll replace that jersey. I'd like my son to have that jersey. We'll buy it. A lot of times you'll change your mind real quick when you find out the replacement jersey costs $250 or the replacement set costs $250, with all the embroidery and all that. So you usually at that time, you don't want to be the thief that steals the jersey. So, turn the stuff back in. If you got helmets, if you got stuff that belonged to the team, if you bought it and it's yours, keep it. So make sure you turn that stuff in. So many teams now, even youth teams, have their own locker rooms. And you see other kids doing things where they think it's really funny to, shove the jersey in their hockey bag and look around like, oh, I'm stealing the jersey. Yeah, stay away from that stuff. It's theft. It's just theft. So on the other end of it, if you do have your own locker room or you have a team that has a storage locker or a locker room with the rink, make sure you get your stuff back. And one of the things about that is on your last day, you might have to bring in another bag because at the junior level, at the college level, at a lot of the high school levels, a lot of prep levels, you don't get to keep the hockey bag. So when you come in that last day, bring your old hockey bag so you can throw all your personal gear, your stuff in your locker in the locker room, back in your bag so you can take it out. Otherwise, you're carrying out a big handful of stuff or using a garbage bag, and that's not always very fun. So the other thing too is financially, fiscally, make sure that you're square with the team so that you'll get a release on time, especially at the youth level. Youth and the Tier 3 juniors, this is important. If you do plan on leaving, you got to be financially square. You got to be fiscally square with a zero balance so that you can actually have that piece of paper in hand. And if your season's not over and you do plan on leaving, start the process now. Start the process now. If you're leaving, hopefully everybody already knows that what your direction is or where you're going, so you're not surprising anybody. But, ask for that release. It's usually through the admin of the league. When I was a youth hockey president, they came to our registrar, and then the registrar and I would sit down and make sure that they were all paid up through the treasurer, via the treasurer, and then we'd sign off on all the forms for the kids leaving. If you don't think you're leaving or you don't know, you can still get a release in hand so that you can leave. And for those of you who don't know what releases are, I know it works different, and they're called different things in different countries. A release is just saying, hey, look, I'm leaving this organization, and I for lack of better terms, I have permission from this league to move elsewhere because I'm financially sound with them. That's really what the release is at this time. It has nothing to do with them having your rights for the next season. Nothing like that at all. So another thing too is, don't forget people on the way out the door. And when I say this, I've been saying this to my 16s that I coach, my 18s I coach, and my junior players, even college players. Hey, look, if you're with a youth organization for a few years, it's just not the coach. It's just not the manager. It's just not the assistant coach. It's the Zamboni drivers. It's the people that work in the concession stands. It's the rink manager. You know what? Take the time to say thank you. Take the time to, show appreciation for everybody. This game is so small. There's nothing worse. There's nothing worse to me in hockey when people walk out the door and they act like they own the place or act like the place owed them something. And remember, all these people are working for a living. They're all working for a living. They don't need any extra angst or anguish. And maybe your season wasn't as it didn't end the way you wanted to, but don't be frustrated with that. Just move on. And with that said, probably the biggest thing I wanted to point out tonight, and then we're going to open it up to some comments and see what else is going on. the biggest thing that bothers me, I try to be extremely positive in hockey. I try to, emote a direction of positivity. I don't like to, I don't think you've ever heard me on this show rip one league or one team. Unless there's something egregious out there, I stay away from that. It never pays. This is the one thing I wish they could bring a zoom in on me right now so you could see the seriousness in my face. It never pays to burn bridges when you walk out the door. It never pays to trash. I don't care how bad the coach may have been. I don't care how many mistakes he made. Nobody, after you leave that team, really has the need to hear, how bad that coach was, how egregious the situation was. Because remember, that next coach could have been teammates with your coach, could have worked for your coach, could have actually been the head coach when the coach you don't like was the assistant coach, or the guy that you coach may end up leapfrogging and being somebody you see again down the line. It happens all the time. Like I said earlier, this is a small group of people, and it's a small community. There's always, this need to move and transitional part of our game that comes along with all this. So, if there's one piece of advice I have is, bashing a program or bashing a coach on the way out the door, social media, how bad things were, stay away from that organization. Yes, you may feel that way. And I get it. I've had those same feelings before myself. My kids had the same feelings before. Our families had the same feeling about a program or a coach. But it rarely makes any sense to share that with anybody else. If somebody says, hey, what'd you think of it? You can say things like, oh, it was a challenging year. But, we learned a lot of things because even with a horrible coach, you can learn a lot of positive lessons that work in your favor for the future. I truly believe that some of the best experiences my kids had were as far as growth and as far as maturity and as far as learning how the human dynamics work and how to work with people were the years where they had really poor coaches. Probably me being one of them. But my point to this is that there's a lot of opportunity to grow and a lot of opportunity to take the upper ground. And there's a lot of opportunity to do the right thing when you leave a program. And I really think, and I truly believe, the way to do it is to say, hey, there was an opportunity there. We took advantage of an opportunity, and it's time for us to move on. However you want to put it in your words, your nomenclature, your paraphrasing, that's fine. But the idea is, when you walk out there and go, that MF or that guy, he ruined everything. Our year was terrible. First of all, even the worst coach, if it's a really poor coach, maybe the guy was just in over his head and doesn't understand how bad things were. But even on your worst day, you're still playing hockey. Even on your worst day, you're still going to the rink and playing a hockey game. I get it. Maybe you're on the third line. You wanted to be on the first line, and you deserve to be on the first line. Maybe you didn't, but at least that's the perception of the situation. That doesn't bother me. That doesn't, all those things are, even all the way up to the NHL, parents and players think the same way they did at U8, okay, at U10. You get to the NHL, and there's a classic example of that. There was a local player here in the Rochester area, number one or top five, first round pick, top five. This is back in the 90s. Great skills. Drafted by Edmonton. Everybody thought he was going to be the next great player. 6'5", 6'6". 4 or 5 years later, 6 years later, there's an article in the local paper, and it was interviewing him and interviewing his father. After a career that bounced around in the NHL for a handful of games, and a career that bounced around in the minors for a few years, and basically the story complained about every coach he had at every level, starting at juniors, and it went all the way through sequentially with every coach. Everything was somebody else's fault, and I think that's what you're setting yourself up for if every time you leave a team, you find fault in the team or you find fault in the coach. I just think it's a bad road to go down. A bad example for us as adults, as parents, as coaches. Try to leave on a positive note. That's my soapbox for the night. I'm done with it. I know I probably pushed the boundaries of what you want to hear and what you want to talk about tonight. So let's go on and say hi to a few people, see who's on the line. We've got a moderate crowd tonight. We've rolled through about 100 people so far tonight, coming and going. Small group, but that's okay. Jacob, good to see you. Andy in Knoxville, good to see you. Chris in Madison. So you think about this. First three people on here tonight: Winston-Salem, North Carolina, Knoxville, Tennessee, Madison, Alabama. Is this sport cool now? It just amazes me that we've got an audience like this that comes from these non-traditional markets. Now, a lot of those people probably came from traditional markets and moved to those areas, but some didn't. So good to see you guys. Hughes in Auburn, thanks for coming on. Dana Zahn from New Hampshire. Richard Zimmerman is on. Good to see you, Richard. Good comments this week, too. Let's see. What are the age limits for junior hockey? I'll get to that in a second after I say hi to some people. Sean's on, checking in from Des Moines. That's now a traditional hockey market, but 10, 15 years ago, you would say non. Brenda, go Wings. Good to see that. John's on from Massachusetts. Lisa on from, is it Renton or Reston, Washington? I don't have my glasses on. Chris, the island, thanks for that information on the rink again. So let's get back to some of the questions. I know I missed some people here. Oh, Brenda's on in Tampa. Good to see you, Brenda. Thanks for coming on. Oh, that's answering my question about where you're. I see what you did. You went on twice. You said go Wings the first time, and then you came back and told me where you're from. Okay, so let's get back to the age limit of junior hockey. Age limits are different in different leagues. I believe USA Hockey, the USHL 16 is, there's a mandate to use 16-year-old players in the league. Each team is required to have players at that age in the league. You can play junior hockey at 16 years old. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if it's Hockey Canada that sets the rules or if it's by each province as they go across with the different, like Alberta and British Columbia, if they set the rules differently. I know that different areas you can't play juniors in Canada, and you have to appeal. You have to actually get an appeal. But I think that's to play at 15. Correct me if I'm wrong if you're out there on that one. That's not a rule that I looked up before I came on the air. Tier 3, you see a lot of players younger. Non-traditional markets will use younger players too. That's not uncommon to see younger players playing at the level. Big discussion. Several people this week asked me the question, at what age should I play? I'm 17 now, or my son's turning 17. Should I come back for one more year of juniors or one more year of U18 hockey, or should he go to juniors? And, everybody's different. That's not there's no canned answer to that says, I can tell you statistically, if you want to play at the higher level of juniors, jumping to tier 3 makes it a harder road to move back into tier 2 or tier 1 or into the CJHL, playing for the CCHL or playing for the Ontario Junior Hockey League, the Alberta Junior Hockey League, or the BCHL, who is independent now. So with that said, there's nothing wrong with going to juniors at an early age. The only problem with that, though, is you go to juniors and let's say you go to the NA3HL, you go to the EHL, you go to the USPHL Premier. Now you're playing with, at 16 or 17 years old, you're playing with people that will turn 21 during the season. Okay, I always used to say that's like having one guy that's ready to have a beer at the strip club while the other kid still thinks there's an Easter bunny. There's a big difference in the maturity level of the locker room when you've got a 15-year-old or a 16-year-old or those age kids in the same room with the other guys. You can really set yourself up for some problems if you don't think this out and really have a good plan in place. There's road trips. There's if you're going off to billet, the world's different. The world's different when you're a junior hockey player and you're playing out of town. When I mean out of town, let's say I'm from Detroit, Michigan, and I end up playing down in Amarillo. When you're in Amarillo, there's not much to do. you're probably going to be doing things that teenage boys do. If you're 15 or 16, do you want to have that same experience? Now, with that said, my son went up to play in Alberta, and the drinking age was 18. So there was, it's hard to say to your kid that's 2,000 miles away, hey, you can't go out with the bar have a drink with the boys in the bar at 18, because that's what the team did. The one night I came in to watch a game, the team, all the guys on the team went to the bar, and the coaches came in and sat a couple tables down from the kids that were drinking beer in the bar. Now, I believe they were all 18 or older at the time, but it's just that, it's a tough thing. So I would throw that into the mix of things to worry about. We were very, very fortunate. Our son handled things well, but there were some kids up there that didn't. There were kids in that league that didn't handle things well. The other thing too is a lot of these towns have small casinos, and if the age is 18 to get into the casino, if they keep saying they need more milk money every day, you could kind of figure out what's going on there too. But 16, 18, if you're playing in a moderate to good league, you're going to be showcased in front of junior programs. You're going to be showcased in front of college programs. And that's a big difference between jumping to juniors at the tier 3 level and U18 hockey. U18 hockey, absolutely, the big argument is it gets diluted. The talent level drops a notch because there's kids that leave to go play juniors at 17 years old. Of course they do at the very high levels, and they do at the lower levels too, but the lower level kids don't have to leave. It's a choice to leave. So anyway, I hope that helps a little bit. Thank you, Chris, on the provincial bodies on answering that on who makes the decision on what age you play. So each province is making the decision. I thought that's the way it was, but I've never really asked that question directly. So we're 35 minutes in, 40 minutes in. Any other questions you have about this? Kind of covered exiting the year. The thing is about exiting the year is, have a practical plan about getting the things and getting what you need out of the team. The other thing I didn't talk about that I'll spend a second on is, when you leave a team, we talked about, leaving the team right as far as being kind and courteous to people. But the other thing is setting up expectations with the coaching staff of what you need and expect walking out of the locker room for the last time. 90% of the teams have exit interviews where you sit down with the coach, maybe the coach and the assistant coach, talk about what the year is like. They usually give you a little sheet of paper where they'll talk about a few things that you did right, you need to work on, some areas you need to improve on. Well, at the same time, that's a great time to say, Coach, as I move forward, I'd like to use you as a reference. If you were going to, and this is a great one to throw out there, if you were going to summarize me in 1 or 2 sentences, how would you summarize my game? And he gives you an answer. And then you ask the same thing of the assistant coach, which probably they're either going to go, I agree with the coach, or they're going to give you something a little bit slightly different or a lot different. It doesn't matter. Now you've got some ammo to start building and triangulating around. We talk about this all the time. You need an elevator pitch. You need to be able to sell yourself in an elevator pitch. Folks, I see hundreds of these a week. I get emails and emails and emails. And if they're not emailing me, it's an advisor forwarding an email, or it's our coaching staff forwarding me an email. And some of these, they get it. They know the only thing I want to see is the hardcore information: name, position, age, team you're currently playing for, your height and weight. And I want a little summary on what kind of player you are. You're a grinder, you're a scorer, you're a playmaker. Are you a shutdown defenseman? Are you an agility goalie? Are you a position goalie? I don't care what. I don't need the fluff, okay? I don't need the fluff. I need the facts. And when people go into these 3 or 4 narrative pages about, it was a hazy mist the first day we walked into the rink with this team, and my son, came out of the mist with a glow behind him as he skated down the ice for the first time. Leave the embellishment at home. It just slows me down on trying to find out more information about you to see if you're a player that can play at the next level. Let me ask you for more information if you don't provide it. In other words, I need to see more video. Of course, put your coach's phone number down there. Of course, if you got an advisor, put his information down there. If you like and trust that the assistant coach is somebody you want as a reference, your prior coach before them as a reference, put all those down. That's great. Having phone numbers accessible to me is great. Some of them I'll have on my phone in speed dial already. Some I won't. It won't be in my directory. So that only makes my job easier when I pick up the phone. And, probably 30% of the time out of all the emails we get, I'm making a phone call. Hey, what do you think about him? Hey, here's what he says he is. He says he's a shutdown defenseman. You got him. He's played for you 2 years. What do you think? And you get a little bit of an assessment of what's going on there. So, getting that piece of information from your coach, though, helps build that narrative. That elevator pitch, 1 or 2 sentences of what he thinks you're like. If you got a skating instructor or a skills instructor, do the same thing with that skills instructor. Prior coaches, if you're using an advisor, do the same thing. A lot of times the advisor's already done this for you because he's worked through all the different people you're triangulating around. But remember, the advisor's job is not to do everything for you. Okay, I got to say that again. The advisor's job is not to do everything for you. Okay, you are still responsible for you. An advisor can help, but there's nothing worse in the world than seeing a player that his season ends and the assumption was because the last time we talked to his advisor, he said, yeah, I think I'm coming back here next year. Let's say he's a first-year U18 player. So the kid sits on his hands waiting for his advisor to tell him what options he has. And his advisor thinks that because he talked to him a month ago and the kid said he was staying there, the advisor's working on other priorities now. He's trying to find, tryouts for other U18 players to go to. He's trying to find homes for some of his junior guys. He's doing other stuff. And he's got a low priority on you because a month ago you had a different mindset. And now that you think you want to leave, he doesn't know. So you haven't communicated. You haven't kept that channel going. It's not their responsibility to read your mind. Now, I'm a believer that if you're working as an advisor, and I don't work as an advisor, so I can't tell you exactly what their day looks like, but I talk to 20 or 30 of them, on a really busy day, I'm talking to 20 or 30. On a really slow day, I'm talking to 3 or 4 or 5. But these guys should be communicating with you too. They should be reaching out and working with you. But it doesn't matter how many times I talk to you, it's still your responsibility. It's your job to make sure the emails are getting out. It's your job to make sure you're making phone calls or whatever you're doing to try to get to the next level. Of course, you want to work hand in hand with your advisor. If you're using an advisor, you might not choose to use an advisor. You may not need an advisor. So enough of that. Let's see what else is going on there. How good is a New England prep school versus junior hockey for a 17-year-old? That's a really good question. It's just like anything else. There's a stratified level of a talent inside that prep league. There are some amazing teams that are going to have NHL players on them that, in any given year. Now, remember, last year, it looked as if the USPHL, the NCDC, had 3 or 4 out of nowhere NHL commits in their league. Why? Because all the prep programs dropped hockey for the year. They stopped. They shut down because of the pandemic. And these kids picked up, anywhere from 1 to 10 games with an NCDC team, and automatically they were marketed as coming from that league. I'm not a fan of that type of marketing because none of those kids were developed there. None of those kids did anything but step on the ice, play a couple games because their prep program shut down. And that's how good the top end of prep hockey is in that league. It can be extremely good hockey. On the bottom end, you got teams that'll play 3, 4, 5, 6 freshmen starting off right off the bat every year, and they just can't seem to ever get it jump started to build that that sense of senior pride where you bring in a group and they stay together all the way through. For the most part, though, it can be really good hockey. How does it compare to junior hockey? The vast majority, we're talking well over 90% of the players that are playing prep will go back to junior hockey after they're done with prep to finish up before they go to college. And people go, well, that doesn't make sense. Why would I go back to Tier 3 juniors or Tier 2 juniors or wherever juniors if I've already played on a really high-end prep team? Well, there are some, NESCAC schools that'll take a kid right out of prep. It's rare. It's rare, and you can do the homework yourself. You can go right onto Elite Prospects. If you go onto Elite Prospects, use the search engine. You can search and see what kids, what the ages are, for the 2000s, and look and see how many 2000s are playing in the NESCAC or whatever college league you want. You can search and do the homework yourself on that. You don't have to take it from me just saying it's some guy that's doing a live stream. Check it out yourself. Now, the difference on prep and juniors, and the reason why you see guys coming back to juniors after prep, is because college coaches know that it's there. It's an avenue. All things equal, they got two guys that played prep. One is 18, 19 years old. One guy's 21 years old. 18, 19 still got sow his oats a little bit. 20, 21-year-old guy's probably been, got a lot of this stuff out of his system. Bigger, stronger, more mature, got a better, clearer insight of where he wants to go. Probably, if he's played a year or two of juniors, he's got some college under his belt, maybe a semester or two, hopefully, and with some AP classes from prep. He's coming in with a strong academic background. Player coming straight out of prep, doesn't have that college, discipline to handle sports and college like the junior guy does. You're going to see that the most coaches, all things equal, you can be the same GPA, you can be the same style player on the ice, is going to take the bigger, stronger, older player, the more mature player, more experience. So you're going to end up back in juniors. It's not a bad avenue. There's financial money that comes with if your resources to pay for prep are the reason why you think you should not play prep. If you got an opportunity to play prep and you're talking to the coach, you might find out that there's some resources, some financial resources to help you, i.e. scholarships, grants, tuition breaks, whatever you want to call them, that you can get to go to a prep school. So don't poo-poo prep hockey because it's just for the rich. Absolutely, some of these schools are extremely expensive, but you got a lot of hockey players out there from hockey families that are going to these schools because they get an opportunity and there's some financial help to help them play. I can tell you the list of guys that pay full boat that I've known over the years versus a list of players that couldn't afford it if they had to pay full boat, but still went and had a great 2, 3, 4 years of prep hockey. The list of guys that were not financial millionaires is a lot stronger than the people I know that paid full boat for prep hockey. So don't look down on it because of money. If you can, that shouldn't dissuade you from at least checking out that opportunity. So let's see what else is going on here. Some other questions. This one's got me off guard. I don't know anything about this new league in California. Is this a new junior league, a new youth league? Haven't heard about it yet. But in all fairness, I haven't been looking for information on California leagues yet. So is this it here? Junior league backed by NHL teams. This is new to me too. If you can forward something to me, DM me. I have not heard or seen anything yet about this, but I find that that's going to be interesting because already there's so much involvement with NHL teams. Remember, the USHL is indirectly funded by the NHL, the whole league, by well over $1 million a year is put into the USHL by the NHL. That it's the conduit is USA Hockey, but and I've got a video out there. All you got to do is watch the video. It only takes a few minutes. How USA Hockey works. Just go to Junior Hockey Advisor on YouTube, and you can pull the video up. It'll tell you about how. It's a fascinating story about how the USHL being funded, the NAL being funded, College Hockey Inc. being funded, women's hockey being funded, how the NHL has stepped in via the National Development Program. How much money is put into those? The NHL spends about $8 million a year via USA Hockey to fund all those different programs. Most people don't know that. They think USA Hockey is being benevolent. No. That money, most of the money is going to pay for some regional directors for the ADM model that don't need to be there, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. They haven't changed the game the way other things have changed the game. And I'll share an article I wrote about that. I'm not anti-ADM. I'm anti-big government in hockey. The more money you give doesn't mean the more people you go out and hire. The more money you get, you try to get it back in the community to make hockey better. And that's a whole nother subject. Anyway, getting on with this, there's so many teams that are already involved. You look at some of the markets, the Buffalo Sabres, they're directly involved with junior hockey with their junior program in Buffalo. They skate out of the same practice facility. It's a beautiful, beautiful situation. Now that team's in the OJHL. Its glory years are probably past because this pandemic has really hurt them right now. It's going to take them a while to get it back to where it was. But there's a lot of programs out there like that. Now, it used to be that NHL teams directly could not be. In fact, even in Buffalo, it's not directly the Buffalo Sabres. It's the Buffalo Sabres Alumni Association that runs the junior program. Just happens to be out of the same building, practice facility. The owner of the Buffalo Sabres funds. You can see the picture, even though they're technically separated. But it used to be that you had to be even one step further away, because back in the old days, the Montreal Canadiens owned several junior teams, and they dictated how hockey ran at that level by owning all the good junior teams. So the indirect money that comes into the USHL, the indirect money that comes into the OHL, that's the way the NHL keeps things running, is by granting money via the organizational level leagues. So watch the video. If you haven't got onto YouTube and watched some of these videos, that one's a good one, because I think you'll be very, very surprised, maybe intrigued. You might learn a little bit about the backside of this. And if you want to do your own research, all the information about the financials for USA Hockey is available online. In a few hours, you can read it all and get a really good sense of where all their money is and where it goes. Very interesting, though, if you do that. So, all right, let's get on to some other questions here. How does the USPHL level compare versus CSSHL? Wow, that's a really good question. I think both leagues, this is my opinion, both leagues have the ability to have a high end and a low end. It's a really, really wide range from top talent or a top team in the league to the bottom team. And the comparison is you can be playing in the CSSHL or you can be playing in the USPHL and find the equivalent on the other side. There's just sometimes the stratification will swing up for one league where they've got 4 or 5 teams that are really high end. But the USPHL, this model is so big now. It's really hard. I'm trying to see if I can pull up really quick and see how many teams they've got in the league. So the comparison is kind of hard because, this is a nationwide league. USPHL right now, I want to say 60 teams. We're going to take a look real quick, but I think the number's crazy big as far as the league goes. So they got 4 columns, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So, you've got well over 60 teams, playing from Atlanta to, LA, playing from, Jersey and north of Jersey into New York. You got teams playing in Michigan. You got them playing in Minnesota. It's so hard to really get a comparison because there's very little crossover. They play a showcase at the beginning of the year. So in comparison to the league you're talking about, let's see if I can pull that up real quick. So if you're talking about U18, 17 temes, so 60-something teams, and I get it. Your league's got 16s, 18s all the way up. But so do they. They've got elite and premier than NCDC. You're talking about a total organization with several hundred teams. It's really hard to get a bearing on it. There are some good organizations in the USPHL, but there's also some bad organizations there just because it's diluted hockey. it's covering a very, very vast amount of ground there. So I wish I could give you a little bit better answer on that, but it's a very, very hard comparison. Probably easier to do team to team. Let's now you guys are just throwing out questions. Prep hockey is very skilled and talented. I was impressed with the skill level. That's coming from a Canadian. That's good to hear, Chris. But this one, now people are just throwing out questions. Hey, Jeff, how does the USPHL compare to the North American Hockey League? No comparison. There's a reason why there's one Tier 1 in USA Hockey and one Tier 2. Tier 1 is USHL. Tier 2 is North American Hockey League. Remember, I tell you this the whole time. The USPHL is a good league for what it does. Okay, the NCDC, you've got one or two teams every year that can play with any junior team in North America. It's usually the Hitmen, it's usually the Boston Junior Bruins, and maybe one other team pops up here and there. The league's going through a little more transition. There's some new members coming in this year. But remember, and this is easy for you to do, you don't have to trust my opinion. Look at the statistics. The whole league, as far as fresh commitments, is usually about 10 or 12 a year. That means from the time the year starts, how many kids commit during the season. And you can start the season wherever you want. You can start it in July at main camps, or August or September, and then run it through the whole year. Now compare that to the North American Hockey League, where you'll get individual teams that will get 8, 10, 12 commitments on a team, which is not uncommon. We're not talking about how many commitments the team has on them, because there's teams like the Hitmen that I use as an example that, they're always a really good team, but they'll get a lot of kids that already have the commitment in hand that join the team. They may have played for 10 games in the BCHL and got homesick. They may have played for a prep team and already had their commitment and said, hey, I don't have to really go anywhere. I can play really close to home for free. I've already got a commitment for the year after. And there's schools like you'll see some of the Ivies that don't have a problem with the NCDC. The Ivies aren't chasing, the same talent that the rest of the leagues are chasing, though they're okay with a kid getting a commitment from them and then staying and playing for the NCDC. Closer to home, they can watch him play. They can watch him grow, versus if a kid goes out and plays in the Midwest or the West for Division I hockey. So there really is no comparison between the two. There is comparison between the Premier League and the NA3HL. But then again, there is no built-in construct for players the same way to ensure that they get an opportunity to try out, that they get an opportunity to make their way up into the North American Hockey League. The NA3HL, every team's going to always have players that are tendered and always have players that are going to main camps and drafted coming off those teams. You don't see the same amount of attention. Maybe they're starting to do this, but with those premier kids to get them into the NCDC. And remember, it's hard to cram, 60, the tops of 62 teams or 64 teams, whatever they've got, into 12, 13, or 14 teams, whatever the NCDC ends up at this year. There's just not room. So especially when they're bringing players in from everywhere to play on those teams, the math just doesn't work. It's not it's not that it's not a good model. There's some really good operators in there. It's just not a comparison. They've only got 10 or 12 commitments every year. They've got a lot of great players that go to play Division III hockey in the NCDC model. Even down into the Premier, you'll get guys that'll go and play quality hockey at the Division III level. That's the minimum threshold for the NAHL. And most of the guys you see that come out of the NAHL, they're playing on the Adrians, they're playing on the Uticas, the Geneseos, the Norwiches, the Wisconsin Stevens Points. They're playing on these teams that are just mega powerhouse, always in the top 5 or top 10 in the national rankings. They're playing in those programs. They're not playing down in the lower echelons of Division III hockey unless they choose to, for whatever reason they want to. So, okay, so I think, Sean, I may have actually got onto this one for you already. It says, can you talk about good Tier 3 teams and leagues? No, I can't, Sean, because I don't define things by leagues as much as I do by teams. The EHL has the best record of any of the leagues as far as production to D3 hockey. As a team-to-team per-player ratio, the EHL does a phenomenal job. It doesn't mean, though, that the Premier League or the NA3HL doesn't do a good job, but they're all there for different reasons. The EHL tends to be a league of destination. You hear me talk about this all the time. When you go to junior hockey, is that league a league of opportunity that's going to transition you to a higher league, or is that league a league of destination? Now, as much as people want to believe that the Premier League is a league of opportunity that you can go to the NCDC, once again, you can't cram 62 teams worth of players into 12, 13 slots, especially teams that don't have any slots open, okay? Those numbers aren't the same in other leagues. The EHL, being that they're autonomous for the most part, now there's a lot of the EHL teams that have relationships with other leagues. My point there, though, is that most of the kids that go to the EHL plan on staying in the EHL and then going to college hockey. They've made up their mind that that's a league of destination for them, and they're going to go there and play it out and have a great opportunity. Is the EHL top teams better than the NA3HL top teams? No. Are the top teams in the EHL better than the top teams in the Premier League? No. They're all, their top 3, 4, 5 teams, they're all good, okay? They're all good for that level, okay? The difference is the bottom end. The difference is, the consistency across the board. And that's something that, I'm not going to rip apart a league because of how bad they are on the bottom. I'm just saying if you find the right league and you're on the top and you can play for one of the better teams, one of the better coaches, you're going to be fine in any of those tier 3 leagues if you find the right program inside the league. People have asked me all the time, why don't you put out a top 10 list? And I could, but the problem is that, I think I get more out of this program by using honey and having I don't want to polarize people by starting to eliminate teams individually that aren't doing it. Now, if there's corruption, if there's illicit bad apples out there, I don't mind calling that out. But you know what? Teams struggle to grow. Teams struggle to learn. Owners get better. General managers get better. Coaches get better. My first experience at junior hockey, I barely knew how to do Russian circle drills down the ice with the players. I was a horrible coach. And I got better. I got better every year at what I did. I became a student of it. So I don't want to rip a guy that's, a brand new coach for a low-level EHL team or for a team that's on the bottom in the Premier League. I don't want to do that because I'm hoping that those guys are there to learn, and it's a development situation for them just like it is for a player. So I know I'm not giving you the answer you want, but that's the answer I'm going to give you. So, all right, let's go on to the next one. Do many NHL teams scout the NAPHL top prospects tourney in May in Blaine? The answer is yes. Last year in Blaine, in a pandemic year, I would say there was at least a consistent 8 to 10 NHL guys there. Now, with that said, the Shreveport Mugbugs goalie, remember, there's usually a lot of things going on at the same time. Now, I'm getting confused on this one. Let me go back to that. At the NAPHL level, top prospects, where you see a lot of NAHL. Okay, I read that wrong. I was talking NHL. So let me talk the NHL side first. At top prospects at the North American Hockey League Championships, you will see a lot of NHL people there. Last year, because of the hype that was built up around the Shreveport goalie, there was even more NHL exposure there. There were, for a couple of the games, there were 20, 30 NHL people in the stands because of the goalie. I take that back. I'm talking about the Shreveport prior to that. They didn't make it to Blaine. This is going up through their playoffs. Tons of exposure there because of Arseny, their backup goalie. He did not play in the playoffs. That was the irony of the whole thing. A couple other goalies, though, did bring a lot of attention. It was goalie-centric last year for the NHL to come into the building at Blaine. Now, the question is, yes, the NAPHL does get exposure from the NAHL teams. Now, some of it's direct and some of it's indirect. Remember, because the teams are playing, you don't get all the coaching staffs coming up to an event during the season from the NAHL. So it's scouting departments, it's player development guys like myself, or it's the fact that they've given a marching orders to maybe their U18 coach too. So you'll get a team of people in the building that are trying to watch a lot of players. So you're getting reports back from coaches that are affiliated with your organization. They're scouting there for you. You've got scouts in the building, and usually you've also got the coaches that are watching back online. I would say that probably 75% of the coaches in the league are watching those top prospect games and seeing what's out there. Now, as the year goes on, that will diminish. By the time playoffs get around, you'd think that there'd be a lot of interest in the NAPHL from all teams when playoffs get around. Now, yes and no. And why do I say it that way? Remember, every team is looking for a couple of NAPHL players to draft, a couple to tender, okay? So they're looking for 3 or 4 NAPHL players. Once they've fulfilled that, their interest in the NAPHL wanes a little bit. They start pushing towards playoffs, and if they got a good playoff run, they're probably not thinking about it much at all. But then after the USHL drafts, then they're starting to look at junior players and older players as the transition. So really, you're getting more attention from the NAHL level coaches at your main camps and at your pre-draft camps as you get later in the spring and summer. I hope that helped a little bit. Sorry, I read that wrong at first. Thought you were looking for NAHL scouts. Let's see. Jeff, understandably, you are sensitive to overhead costs. You know business. Some overhead is necessary. Not all is value added. You're absolutely right. You're right on the money with that. Watch my video, Chris. See what you think about the USA Hockey video I do on YouTube. For all of you, I'm trying to grow this YouTube group. I've been trying to do this for a couple months now. It's slowly growing. I've doubled the group, but when you double it from 1 subscriber to 2, you're not really impressed with those numbers. Now, we've grown it by a couple hundred people in the last month or two, but we're still trying to grow the group. If you're not subscribed to it, please take the time to subscribe to our Junior Hockey Advisor YouTube page. You got a lot more content on there than you do on our discussion group, because you get a myriad of different things that I've done on different topics that go on the YouTube page. So scroll through there, look at the live stuff that is stuff like this. Then there's also little mini videos that we put up there too, 3, 4, 5, 10-minute videos. But that USA Hockey video on the ADM model, you'll probably enjoy that. And I think that you'll find some value in that if you watch that. And I sure would like some feedback if you do watch it. So hopefully that can help a little bit. Well, that's it, folks. I don't see any more questions coming in, or not ones that I want to tackle tonight. For those of you who had some questions that I skipped, I try to usually say, shoot you a DM and say, look, that's a good topic for another time. Or, that's a little bit of a dicey topic. I don't want to get into that, role. We're not here to slander or hurt anybody's feelings. We're here to try to grow the sport and to give you lots of information to make good decisions. So hopefully you enjoyed it. Thanks for sticking around so long tonight. We had a good crowd making it all. We grew the group as the night went on, which is nice, and you stuck with us. So I appreciate that too. And please, on our Facebook discussion group, make sure you join it. Our page, make sure you join the page. So like and subscribe to our YouTube page. It doesn't seem to make much sense to do that stuff. From my end, it makes a lot of sense because it's all about growth, and we're trying to achieve something bigger here than just being one guy talking once a week. We want to get this up so you got lots of avenues through Junior Hockey Advisor to get lots of bits of information. So have a great night, folks, and we'll see you next week.